It will say, good morning. I am sorry that I am unable to be with you in person, but I'm Hashem, it is supposed to be able to still learn with you virtually. Looking forward to seeing everyone on Wednesday morning. B'shah tova u'matzlachos. Today's daf is Chaf Aleph 21. We are picking up on Chaf Aleph base 20b, about 19 lines up from the bottom at the two dots. Lo yiftach chonos. Remember again, the Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, if Ruvain, let's say, has a storehouse on an upper floor, there's a limitation as to what I can do on the lower floor. So, for example, again, the Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, if Ruvain has lo yiftach adam chanon shel machtumin, I can't open up a bakery or a dye shop underneath Ruvain's storage area, because l'maisa, again, now remember, as we saw, storage typically means wheat, oil, or wine, because the smoke from either my bakery or from my dye shop will go ahead and damage Ruvain's items. So Gemara says, Tana, im refes kodemas la'otzar mutter. Now, however, again, this of course presupposes that Ruvain's storage area precedes the use of my lower area. In other words, if I first have a stable on the lower floor, and then Ruvain decides to go ahead and put storage on the upper floor, so that I don't have to move my stable because I was there first. So the Gemara now asks a series of questions. So what happens if halacha l'maisa Ruvain, who's occupying the upper area, he cleaned out the area in anticipation of making it a storage area, but didn't yet actually begin to store items there? So in other words, he didn't put any wheat or olives or wine. He didn't put anything there yet, but he's cleaned it out. So clearly he's readying the space. Does that preclude me from using the lower space, let's say again as a bakery or as a dye shop? The Gemara says similarly again. So bona aliya gabe beisomahu. What happens if halacha l'maisa again? Ruvain built another story. In other words, I'm occupying the lower story. Then there's an upper story, and then Ruvain builds a third floor. So again, halacha l'maisa's intention of building the third floor is to use it for storage. Now again, generally, if we assume that smoke will even damage something above. Does the act of building an upper story indicate that he plans on using it for storage and therefore precludes me from potentially doing something on the lower level that could adversely impact the storage on the upper level? The idea being over here is, in the Mishnah's case, it was clear that Ruvain was utilizing the upper story first. So his storage preceded my use of the lower story. So in that case, the Mishnah says, halacha l'maisa, I'm limited what I could use the lower story for. In these cases in the Mishnah, so again, Ruvain is clearly readying the space, but he has not yet used the space. So does that preclude me, or does that limit the way that I could use the lower level? So the Gemara answers in all these cases, teku. Rav Yeshua, Tamri verimoni mai. Interesting. What happens if Ruvain is using it for storage, but he's not using the upper story for storage for wheat, for olives, or for wine, but instead he's using it for storage, for example, for tamri verimoni, dates and pomegranates. So Rashi points out to ver tamri verimoni, hichnis sham tamarim verimoni mi havya haschalas otzar, al dilma ein otzar ela betvua yain v'shemen. So do we consider that, so that means Ruvain has designated this as a storage area, and since it's a storage area, therefore that precludes me from using the lower area for the prohibited uses that we saw, a dye shop or a bakery or a stable. So in other words, essentially, what creates a storage identity? Is it dafka only wheat, olives, wheat oil, wheat olives, and wine? Or no, once he begins to store it for anything, that by definition carves out and cements the identity as a storage area, and therefore precludes me from using the lower area for any of the prohibited uses. To which the Gemara answers, teku. Gemara tables it. Okay. The MSBI nitiru. So also remember again, the Mishnah ended off in an interesting way. The Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, the truth is, you could put a dye shop or a bakery below a wine storage area because actually the smoke is good for the wine. The only thing you can't put below the wine storage area is a stable because the foul odor is detrimental. So says the Gemara Tana, so again, the Mishnah reflects the idea that the smoke is actually beneficial for the wine, but the smell of the stable is detrimental. Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says that might have been true for the wine of the Mishnah, but our wine, afilu kutra d'shraga nami kashile. Our wine, I guess we'll call it, is more sensitive. So even the smoke that comes from a candle has a negative impact upon the wine. Rav Sheshes, and therefore again, so Rav Yosef is adding in is that contemporarily our wine, you would not be permitted to even put a bakery or a dye shop underneath it because any kind of smoke would adversely impact the area. Rav Sheshes says, V'aspasta kerefes bakar damya. Aspasta, which was a plant that was often used for animal fodder. So Rashi points out over here Rashi points out that it's moist, and ultimately, again, it generates heat, and it becomes putrid. So because of that, it has the status of a stable, and therefore one would not be permitted to go ahead and store aspasta underneath someone else's storage area. Okay, incredible. Let's go to now new Mishnah, really incredible Mishnah. Chanus shebechatzer. So let's say I'm neighbors with Ruvain, and Ruvain has a store that he operates out of his chatzar, out of his courtyard. Yochel limchos biyadav alomar any yochel lishom mikol hanichnasim mikol hayotzin. I could say to Ruvain, listen, you can't operate a business outside in the chutzner. I can't sleep because of the pedestrian traffic. Now, obviously, this has to presuppose that the business was not there before I moved in. In other words, if the business was there before I moved in, then the pashtos, again, I knew what I was getting into, and the other bnei chutzner agreed to it. So, assuming that Reuven opens up a business, and at first I'm trying to be a good neighbor, maybe I'm a little bit agreeable, and then I turn around and say, Reuven, I can't do this. I cannot live with the constant pedestrian traffic. So the halacha sides with me. The halacha sides with me, the neighbor in the chutzner. Aval. But Reuven, let's say Reuven's making utensils in his home. So he's not running a business in the chutzner, but rather again he's making utensils in the home. So this is interesting. So when do I have a right to object? When Reuven is operating a business in the chutzner. But if Reuven is making utensils in his home, and let's say there's a lot of clanking, there's a lot of noise, I, the neighbor, have no right to object. Seemingly based on the idea that a person has a right to do whatever they want inside their home. So Reuven's making utensils, that's his right. He's the owner, he can do whatever he wants. And I don't have the ability to object because of the sound of the hammer, because of the sound of the mill, or because of the sound of children. Now that last phrase, because of the sound of children, doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the Mishnah. Hold on for just a little bit. Says the Gemara. Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa. What's the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa? Meaning, look at Rashi, Maishna Reisha, Diktani Yachol Lomer, Any Yachol Lisha, Mikol Hanichnas, and Vayotzin. The Seifa Katani, Any Yachol Lomer, Lo, Any Yachol Lisha, Mikol Hatinokos. Here's what's interesting. In the beginning of the Mishnah, so the Mishnah said that if Reuven's running a business out of his house, out of his chutzner, and then I could say, Reuven, you got to close down the business because I can't sleep because of the constant pedestrian traffic. Yet, the end of the Mishnah says that if Reuven is doing something and there are children always coming in and out, I don't have the right to stop that. So it sounds like from the Reisha, from the beginning of the Mishnah, that noise generated by enhanced pedestrian traffic, I, the neighbor, have a right to say, stop. The Seifa seems to indicate that you don't have a right to put an end to pedestrian traffic. So what's the distinction? Ella Amar Rav Rabba said this is an incredible Gemara. Ella Amar Rava, top of Chaf Aleph 21a, Seifa Asan L'Tinoko Shabeis Rabban. Wow. The end of the Mishnah is talking about school children. That Reuven, my neighbor, opened up a yeshiva. He opened up a yeshiva, and therefore there are kids always coming in and out. For that, I don't have the right and the ability to object. What's going on over here? So first of all, Rashi says, first Rashi 21a, Seif Ason L'Tinoko Shabeis Rabban, V'Afagav D'Kol Haba Machmas Acherim Lo Matzi Mechuyeh. Even though there is noise being generated by other people who are not members of the chutzner, I don't have the right to object. So we'll say, so even before we go on, the Gemara is making this fascinating distinction between, on one hand, what we'll call general pedestrian traffic. So if Reuven is doing something that is creating additional pedestrian traffic in the chutzner, I have the right to say, stop it. However, again, if that pedestrian traffic is school children, I don't have the right to shut it down. What is this talking about? So we'll say, get ready for this. So the Gemara says, Umitakanas Yoshua ben Gamla ve'elach. And this is talking about from the time of the enactment of Yoshua ben Gamla and on. Who was Yoshua ben Gamla? Rashi says over there, Mishum Takanas Yoshua ben Gamla, Echad mina kohanim hagidolim sha'amdu bebayis sheni. Yoshua ben Gamla was one of the righteous Kohanim Gidolim during the times of the Second Temple. I remember again, unfortunately, there were many non-righteous, unholy Kohanim Gidolim during the times of the Second Temple era. Hence, the frequent turnover in the position. People died pretty much every Yom Kippur. But Baruch Hashem, there were a number of very righteous men. Amongst them, Yoshua ben Gamla. So Yoshua ben Gamla made the following takana. What was his takana? This is incredible. I'm both get ready for this Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Baram. Zachar osa ish zachar latov. This man is remembered for good. Who are we talking about? Yoshua ben Gamla Shmo. His name was Yoshua ben Gamla. Some have the version of Rabbi Yoshua ben Gamla. Yoshua ben Gamla, a high priest, a Kohen Gadol, during the era of the second Beis Hamikdash. What did he do? Shilmalehu, for not for Yoshua ben Gamla, nishtachach Torah mi Yisrael. Torah would have been forgotten from Klal Yisrael. So just to understand like the enormity of that. That what did Yoshua ben Gamla do? Were it not for him, Torah would have been forgotten from Klal Yisrael. So first of all, just to be able to have that said about you is such an incredible, incredible thing. Why? What happened? In the beginning, someone who had a father, father would teach him Torah. Or if you had a father, you had a Rebbe, your father would teach you Torah. However, again, if somebody did not have a father, lo hayalama Torah, ultimately, again, he wouldn't learn. So again, that's the way it worked. If you had a father who would teach you, you would learn. If you didn't have a father, either you didn't have a father or your father couldn't teach you, you didn't learn. So the Gemara says, "My Darish." Now, where did this concept that a father was responsible for the chinuch of his son, where did this come from? The pasuk says, "V'li maritem osam." The pasuk by Kriya Shema says, "And you will teach them." We darshan it, "V'li maritem." Who should teach your children? Atem. So it's a little bit of a play on words. "V'li maritem osam es b'nechem l'darebam." You shall teach your children. So the Gemara darshans, "V'li maritem osam, v'li maritem atem." Who's supposed to teach a child? A parent. A parent. Primary chinuch. That ultimately are the responsibility. The primary responsibility for chinuch devolves upon the parent. So therefore, so while that's beautiful and incredible and so special, it works if you have a parent. Either if you actually physically have a parent, or you have a parent who's capable of giving you that chinuch. What happens if a child didn't have a parent, either didn't have a father, or the father wasn't capable of doing it? Such a child would remain ignorant. So what happened? His skinu shemo shivim alam de tinokis piyushalayim. Both is incredible. So Yoshua ben Gamla made the following enactment. He set up the first school system. That there should be teachers of children set up in Yerushalayim. So the first, we'll call it formal system of education, was set up in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. Yoshua ben Gamla sets up a bunch of teachers, Malam de Tinokos. Now again, why Yerushalayim? Well, says beautiful, my darush, Kimi Tzion Teitze Torah. Because the pasuk says in Yeshaya, from Tzion, Torah will come forth. Tzion, a reference to Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. From Tzion comes Torah. I will say, it happens to be, look at Tosas for just a moment. Kimitzion Teitze Torah, beautiful, beautiful Tosas. What is it? Why is it that Torah comes? It's not like the Torah was given in Yerushalayim, right? Torah was given in the desert. So what's the pshat that Torah in its essence comes out of Yerushalayim, Yira Kodesh? So look at Tosas. Kimitzion Teitze Torah. Lefisha hayaroa kidusha gidola, v'kohanim oskim ba'avoda, hayimechavin libo yoser liyiras Shamaim, v'lilmo Torah. This is beautiful. Yerushalayim was a place of Kiddusha. Yerushalayim is a place of Kiddusha. Yerushalayim was even a more concentrated place of Kiddusha when there was the Beis HaMikdash. And you would go, and again, Tosas writes, you would see Kohanim who are constantly and perpetually involved in Avodas Hashem, in the service of the Beis HaMikdash, service of Klal Yisrael, service of the Ribbon Shalom, and as a result, Mechavim Libo Yoser. Being in the atmosphere of Yerushalayim Yira Kodesh with all of its Kiddusha and with all of the people who were singularly focused on Avodas Hashem, ultimately, again, it inspired a person to learn. I will say, isn't that incredible? What is a Kimi Tzion Teitze Torah? Since Yerushalayim is the home of the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash is the epicenter of spiritual service, so therefore, by definition, Yerushalayim is a place which lends itself to spiritual growth. When you were in Yerushalayim, you wanted to be more. When you were in Yerushalayim, you wanted to learn more. When you wanted to Yerushalayim, you wanted to self-actualize more. That's Kimi Tzion. Yerushalayim is a place of Torah, a place of avoda, a place where people are yearning for greatness. So Yoshua ben Gamla says, let's put the teachers in Yerushalayim. It's so beautiful. Tosas goes on. He says, "Kedarsh b'sefri leman tilmod liyira gadol ma'aser sheni shemevi lidei talmud lefishaya omi b'Yerushalayim ad sheyocha ma'aser sheni shelo vayaroa shekulam oskim b'melecha Shamaim u'ba'avoda haya gam hu mechavin liyerushalayim va'osik b'Torah." The power of Yerushalayim, the power of Yerushalayim is the power of a positive atmosphere. When you went to Yerushalayim, again, when the Beis HaMikdash was standing, so you saw the Beis HaMikdash, you saw the Kohanim, you saw the Levim, you saw people who devoted their entire lives to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That created an atmosphere throughout the entire city. So just by being there, it's the power of positive environment. Sometimes, even if I myself don't feel like I'm doing all the things I need to be doing, I'm not growing in the way I need to grow, Put yourself in the right environment. And the environment has an impact. I will say, this is one of the most important things. I know this sounds like a little bit hypocritical. I'm giving this year virtually, but part of the power of learning is not just listening to a shir, right? It's not just listening to a shir. It's Baruch Hashem, of course. It's wonderful. Is being in a beis medrash, is making sure that you're planning. We know this, right? Eina doma, when a person comes to shir and listens to shir in the beis medrash. I'm listening to it in my house, in my dining room, and again, any way you learn is always beautiful, but there's a certain impact that a person has when they're in an atmosphere of Kiddusha, right? Again, we juggle a lot of different things. So sometimes I don't have much of a choice. I have to do whatever I can do. But Lamaisa, at least for some time in my life, maybe it's not for shir, maybe it's just for a chavrusa, or maybe it's just for a couple of minutes of learning myself, put yourself in an avirah, in an atmosphere of Kiddusha. It has an impact on you. Kimi Tzion Teitzi Torah. Why? Yerushalayim was a place of Kiddusha. Put yourself in that atmosphere and incredible personal things occur. So beautiful. So Yoshua ben Gamla set up the first beis medrash in Yerushalayim. The first, right, or I should say, not beis medrash, but Melandi Tinokos, educational system. So there's Vadayin Misha Yesh La'av Hayamala Malamdo, Misha Ein La'av Lo Haya Olev Lamad. Here was the problem. That's beautiful, except once again, someone who had a father, his father brought him to Yerushalayim to learn. And what about someone who didn't have a father? So again, what was he going to do? So again, he was still left out in the cold. So what the Yoshua ben Gamla instituted is Kinu, Shimoshivin b'chol plach u'plach, u'machnisin osan keben tazayin keben yodzayin. So this is incredible. So then they extended takana. Now we're not only going to set up teachers in Yerushalayim, we're going to set up teachers in every city. Every city has to have its own system of teachers who could educate the youth. Now here's what's incredible. When did they begin education? At 16 or 17 years old. Fascinating. 16 or 17 years old, they bring him into yeshiva. I just want to point out, we're going to see they amend this, but I just want to point out something amazing. Why didn't it dawn on Yoshua ben Gamla to start education earlier? So I will say it's very important to understand that it is not natural for children to sit still, right? It's an incredible thing that all too often today, like kids who can't sit still in class, they get all kinds of labels. They have this, they have that, they have this, they have that. There is a label. You know what the label is? It's called being a child. So as being a child, it is not natural to sit at a desk for prolonged periods of time. Being a child, it's not necessarily natural to be in school from 8 o'clock in the morning until the end of a very long day. It's not natural. It's such an interest. Again, it's become the regilos as we have, and we'll see where that came from. But it's just important to say that, like in the original, original educational thinking, it's like, when do you get a kid into school? Later, when they're capable of sitting. 16, 17 years old, they're capable of sitting down. Again, we see this all the time, right? You see this, boys who go through yeshiva system and I don't know, they never really take to Gemara. And then they go to Eretz Yisrael, or they go to Yeshiva Gadol, and suddenly again, they love it. They can't get enough of it. So a lot of it is atmosphere, but some of it is also maturity. They might not have been ready to sit earlier on, but they are ready to sit now. Interesting idea. In any event, there was a problem with starting the educational process so late. What was the problem? Here is the problem. At 16, 17 years old, you're already a bit defiant, or could be a bit defiant. That has changed. So now, the Talmudic 16, 17 years old is probably the equivalent for us now of 6 or 7, when our children become fiercely defiant. In any event, so the Gemara says, what would happen? 16, 17 years old, so a kid gets into a fight with the Rebbe, and then what happens? He walks out. He just walked out. And that was it. V'yatza. So Yoshua ben Gamla came along and said like this, here's what we need to do. Yes, we need to build on this system. We're going to have rebbeim in every city, in every locale, not just Yerushalayim. Not only that, but again, every city. Bring them in when they're young. Bring them in when they are young and impressionable, still have a respect for authority, and they'll listen. And that way, again, you could begin to mold impressionable young minds. But it's interesting, I will say, 6 or 7. 6 or 7 was the earliest that Yoshua ben Gamla was willing to put kids in an atmosphere of formal education. Really very interesting. Amarle Rav Shmuel Bar Achis lo tekabel. Never accept a student in your classroom younger than 6. So what should kids be doing younger than 6? They should be having fun. They should be playing. They should be outside. They should be enjoying. They should be kids. They should be kids. Again, obviously, our world is different. Education is different. Everything is different. But sometimes it's a little bit refreshing to see how Chazal did understand certain things. Younger than 6, do not try to put a kid at a desk. Do not try to put a kid in the classroom. Let him be a kid. Okay, 6 years old, you could bring him in. He says, Mikan ve'elach, Kabil, from 6 years old and on, you could bring him in. Ve'asvi leketura, stuff him like an ox. What does that mean? That just like sometimes they would force feed oxen to fatten them up. Supply the child with as much information as you can. Obviously, the imagery of force feeding is not a pleasant one, but the idea is that a child is open to knowledge, and a child is like a sponge. Feed the curiosity, feed the intellect, feed the interest. Just like the ox wants to keep on eating, the child will keep on absorbing as long as the Rebbe is able to present it in a way that the child is able to hear it and the child is able to ingest it. Whatever. So literally force feed him like an ox. Again, but not the force feeding like with force, but rather, again, give him as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Incredible. Furthermore, if you have to discipline a child, so literally, again, if you have to hit a child, lo timchi ela ba'ar kasa de mesana. Do not hit him with anything more than a shoelace. So we'll say, so obviously they're coming from a model of physical discipline, which certainly, again, in our contemporary educational settings is absolutely no place at all. Different times, chinuch has to be fundamentally different. Even in parenting has to be fundamentally different. But even the Gemara says when they did believe in physical discipline, if you're going to hit the kid, hit him with a shoelace. In other words, that it should be something that gets the message across, but doesn't chas v'shalom hurt the child. So the Gemara says, the kari, the low kari lehavzeh b'tzas l'chavre. This is incredible. And a student who gets it. What about a kid who doesn't get it? Let's say, no, isn't this incredible? What about a kid who just is in yeshiva, is in with the malamid, he's learning, but he's just not absorbing anything? So the Gemara says, what do you do with him? Lehave tzavse lechabre. Leave him with his friends. Leave him with his friends. So we'll say, what does this mean? Rashi says, Lahavi tzavse lechabre, einon zakoch liyasrol yoser midai. Don't discipline him too much. Certainly don't remove him from the yeshiva. Ela yeshev im ha'achirem mitzavse v'sofo lo say slave. Keep him with the chevra. Keep him with the chevra, and as long as the chevra is good, he'll come around. He'll come to love learning. He'll come to be engaged. But again, don't discipline him too much. Don't go and remove him from the yeshiva. Just leave him with his friends. Give it time, and the power of a positive peer group will ultimately have its impact on him. So let's say, see this theme over and over. The power of a positive peer group. The power of positive surroundings. Ki mitzion teitzei Torah. Go to Yerushalayim Yiragodesh. And the Kedusha ultimately, again, will go ahead and impact your neshama. The kid's not doing that well in yeshiva, keep him with his friends, and ultimately, again, they will have a positive impact on him. Incredibly. So the Gemara says, Meisvei. So therefore, again, kind of bringing this full circle, so that's when the Mishnah says that if Ruvain, my neighbor, has school children coming in and out, I can't stop that. What is that talking about? Ruvain's a Rebbe. So now from the Takan of Yeshua ben Gamla, there are yeshivas in every single city. Ruvain is a Rebbe. He's got students coming in. I can't object to that. Incredible. I can't object to that. Somewhere says, may say, where is the kasha? If I'm living in a chatzar, one of the members of the chatzar wants to become a rofe. Rofe in this context, Rashi means a moel. Not a doctor per se, but a moel. Uman, a bloodletter. Gardi, a weaver. So these are all people who attract a lot of pedestrian traffic. Umalami tinogos, or a rebbe, a teacher. So the other members of the chatzar have the ability to object. Contradicts the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that if one of the members of the chatzar is a rebbe, no one else could object. Here we're seeing you can object. What's going on? Very interesting. We're talking about a teacher of non-Jewish children. So again, I can't object to a teacher of Jewish children. That's the Takan of Yeshua ben Gamla. But I can object if my neighbor is a public school teacher and there are Gentile children walking in. I don't have to. I didn't sign up to be living in a schoolyard, so that I do have the right to object to. Incredible. So Tashma, let's go weiter. Tashma. Shnaim shir shebechatzar. Bikesh achmem lasos rofei v'umen v'gardim alametinokos chavero ma'akev alov. Another brayso. I'm Reuven's neighbor on the Chutz, and Reuven decides he wants a career change. He wants to become a moel, or a bloodletter, or a weaver, or a teacher. I have the ability to object. Once again, contradiction to the Mishnah. Again, once again, we're talking about where he's educating non-Jewish children. To that, I have the right to object. Tashma. If somebody has a home in a jointly owned courtyard, so I'm Reuven's neighbor. So we'll say, so again, I'm Reuven's neighbor. Reuven's now renting out his property. So I could object to Reuven renting out his property to a moel, to a bloodletter, to a weaver, or to a Jewish or non-Jewish educator. To which the Gemara says, what's the case over there? So I'll say that case is more like where the person who's going to rent it is going to be like, he's like the school superintendent. In other words, he's the guy who oversees the entire educational system. So that's a much bigger job. And halacha l'maisa, again, everyone comes to him. So everyone comes to the school superintendent. That's a lot of pedestrian traffic. So that even if he's engaged in education of Jewish children, that type of traffic I can object to. Incredible. Amar Rava, mita kanas Yeshua ben Gamla ve'elech lo mimatinon yinuka mimasal masal. So this is very interesting. So Rava is like this. From Yeshua ben Gamla. So remember, Yeshua ben Gamla set up that there are rebbeim in every single city. From that point forward, so the halacha is you can't take a child from one city to another city for education. In other words, every city has its educational infrastructure. You shouldn't transport children from one city to another city for chinuch. Now, what's the logic? Rashi says over here, Lo matin yinukum maslamasa lilmod miyom liyom shema yuzak bidrachim. What are we concerned about? We're concerned about that the child is going to be injured on the way. Shasatan mekatreg b'shasa sakana. So we'll say this is why, because we're afraid that the Satan chas v'shalom will do. Remember again, Satan, Yitzhar hara, malach hamavis, as we saw last week, all one entity. We're afraid that the Satan is going to chas v'shalom harm the child. So we'll say, what is it? What does this mean? So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, you shouldn't have children commute to yeshiva back and forth every single day. Rather, use the yeshiva that's in your own community. What's the pshat that the child is in danger because he's going to be going to a different city to learn? So let's understand that the Satan really goes ahead and tries to get us at moments where we have the greatest potential for kedusha. There is nothing holier in this world than the Torah learning of young children. It's pure. It's without ego. There's no covet involved. It's just pure avodas Hashem. When the Satan sees that that's about to happen, he wants to jump in order to derail that. So therefore, again, transporting kids from one community to another community for Torah learning puts them in potential danger. Therefore, use the educational infrastructure within your own community. Aval, but within the same community, you could go from one shul to another. You don't want your kids from this Rebbe, you want that Rebbe, this shul, that you're allowed to do. But even in the same city, if there's, let's say, a river in between the two shuls, you shouldn't have the kid cross the river. Again, puts the child in unnecessary sakana. If there's a solid bridge, then you could cross the river. If it's just like a little plank, a little tiny bridge, he should not go across. So we'll say, so the idea of here, really incredible, just shows you just the profundity. It just, what the Gemara is highlighting is the power of the chinuch of our children. That when a young child is going to learn Torah, there is nothing holier in the world. Like the Gemara says that the world is sustained from the Hevel Piem Mitoga Shalei Shrabim. Literally, again, the breath of young school children. Their Torah is so pure to the point that the Satan himself looks to get them. Therefore, again, don't chas v'shalom put the children in sakana when they're going to learn. That's how precious and that's how holy their Torah is. It also tells us something very important in the chinuch of our children. The chinuch of our children is everything. And what we have to be so careful with is that the chinuch that we give our children in our home supports and mirrors the chinuch that we're giving our children in school. Right? We send our kids to school, whatever you do, yeshivas, day schools, wherever we're sending our children. And hopefully our children are receiving inspirational Yiddishkeit. They're learning halacha, and they're learning hashkafa, and they're learning Gemara and Mishnah, and all these different beautiful things. And in their yeshiva or day school, hopefully they're being taught, we know they're being taught, the importance and the primacy and the beauty of Yiddishkeit. That chinuch is so important. And our job as parents is to make sure that the chinuch we give them in the home, which is even more important than the chinuch that they receive in their respective schools, that the chinuch of the home mirrors the chinuch of the yeshiva, that the chinuch of the home mirrors the chinuch of the day school, that whatever the values that our schools are giving to our children are not only bolstered, right, and reinforced, but are modeled within our homes as well. So precious is the chinuch of our children. They have to make sure that whatever they get in yeshiva is not chas v'shalom undone by what they see happening within our homes. The homes have to become the place to reflect, and ultimately to mirror and reinforce and model the very chinuch that we are setting our children up for. Incredible. Let's go weiter. So the Gemara says, "V'amarava sach michri dedardiki esrin v'chamishinuki." This is interesting. So what is the staff to student ratio from a Talmudic perspective? You should never have more than one Rebbe for 25 students. So that is a very high ratio. That's a very high ratio. Could be that kids are just more attentive, but that is right. So one Rebbe for every 25 students. V'ika chamshin mosin and trei. If there are 50 students, you need two Rebbeim. V'ika arba. And what if you have 40 students? So what says here's the thing, right? So 40 students, 40 talmidim, on one hand is too big for one Rebbe, but not big enough for two shiurim. So what do? So the Gemara says mokmina and reish dochna u'meseya lememasa. So we tell the Rebbe to hire essentially like a teacher's assistant. Reish Dochna says, Shomea imat tinokos v'gnei malamid v'chozer umashkiro b'fiat tinokos v'asur Reish Dochna noto schar. So essentially hire a teacher's assistant. Teacher's assistant hears what the Rebbe is saying, and then he does like individual work with some of the students, maybe who are weaker or who need a little additional attention. And again, Mesayim Masa means, and the community pays towards this teacher's assistant. V'amarava, hai mikri yenuki, digaris, v'ika achrina digaris tfemine, lo misalkina le'dilma asi le'is reshule. So we'll say, this is an incredible Gemara. Watch this. So Rava says like this. Let's say you have a Rebbe. And the Rebbe's good, but there's another Rebbe who's even better. His pace is faster, he's clearer, he's better skills. So Rava says, whatever you do, don't replace the first Rebbe with the second Rebbe. Why? What are we concerned about? Because the second Rebbe then may allow this newfound success to go to his head and say, oh, look at me. I want some person to feel successful. They no longer try as hard. And the second Rebbe is going to become complacent in his job and not try as hard. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? All the more so. If the second Rebbe knows that he's the replacement for the first, he also knows that what? Just like the first Rebbe was replaced because he wasn't doing a good enough job, so to the second Rebbe could also be replaced because he's not doing a good enough job. The knowledge that you are replaceable in your position is the greatest catalyst for higher performance. We'll say, this is incredibly important. This is why, again, in general, in educational settings, in yeshivas and day schools, right, we don't believe in tenure. I don't know, maybe tenure works in universities, but in an educational setting, what you want is excellence. So the job is yours. As long as you are the best person for the students. But the moment that you're not the best person for the students, someone else who is the best, because the students deserve the best. It's not a din, right, that the Rebbe deserves the job. Remember, again, I will say, the greatest Aryeh to this is Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu was going ahead and on Har Sinai receiving the Luchos, and Klal Yisrael built the Egel, built the golden calf, Hakadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lech reid, go down from here. Go down. Kishichei samcha. Your nation has corrupted itself. And Rashi says, Leich reid. Hashem says, Moshe, go down. Reid migdulascho. Go down from your greatness. Hakadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, if Klal Yisrael is so depraved, I don't need you anymore. You're only Moshe Rabbeinu because there's a nation. If there's no nation, you're not Moshe. In other words, the leader is only the leader because of his constituents. The Rebbe is only a Rebbe because of his talmidim. If the talmidim are learning, then the Rebbe is a Rebbe. If the talmidim are not learning, then the Rebbe is not a Rebbe. He might be a great guy, but he's not a Rebbe. The teacher is not a teacher if the students aren't being motivated and inspired. So therefore, it's incredible. Avdimi Avnardah says, no. We don't have tenure. Well, just because the first guy had the job for longer, even when the second guy is better, we're not going to replace the first guy. Chas v'shalom. Replace, obviously, with kavod, with dignity. Of course, you have to take care of everyone, especially, again, Rebbeim who devote their lives to the chinuch of our children. But at the end of the day, it's not a tenured position. At the end of the day, again, it's yours as long as you are the best person for the job. But once there's someone who's better, the talmidim deserve the best. So Rav Dina Nardah says, no, replace the first guy. And trust me, the second guy is going to be looking over his shoulder in a good way. This concept of kinas sofrim tar b'chachma. Jealousy, scribal jealousy, or teacher or Rebbe jealousy, amplifies or increases wisdom. I will say, this is true in everything in life. Right? Competition is good. Competition makes everyone better. Competition makes businesses better. Competition makes teachers better. Competition makes rebbeim better. Competition makes rabbanim better. Everyone is better when they know that there's someone else doing the same thing. So if someone else is doing what I'm doing, then I have to figure out a way to do it better. And if I can't, I'm not going to be the best. Okay, by the way, which is okay sometimes also. So as a wise man once says, sometimes it's okay to come in second. In other words, second is not bad either. But lemaisa, a little bit of competition is good in every single area of life. It's incredible. Va'amarava, hani trei mikri de dardik. This is incredible Gemara. These two rebbeim, chad garis v'lo daik, v'chad daik v'lo garis. So we'll say, watch this. Let's say you have a choice between two rebbeim. One rebbe goes at a very fast pace, like exciting fast pace, but he's not as precise in the way that he conveys the information. Rashi says over here, Rashi says, the garis v'lo daik. Shalom et harbe, last Rashi on the daf. V'lo daik b'lim latinok shleish tabshu. So the first Rebbe gives a lot of information. So to me, they get a lot of information, but the truth is, he's not so careful that they don't make mistakes in what they're learning. So they're getting a lot of information, but it's not necessarily with complete clarity. Versus a second Rebbe who goes much slower, so much less information, but complete clarity. Which is the better Rebbe? So the Gemara says, V'chad daik v'lo garis, mosvin anahud de garis v'lo daik, shabesh tamei nafka. So the Tanakama says, Rava says, listen, it's incredible. Go with the Rebbe who teaches at a faster pace, even though, again, the information is not as clear. So why? So Rava's thing is like, look, whatever the students make a mistake about, they'll correct their mistakes later on. In other words, get them as much knowledge as you can in their young years, and whatever mistakes they absorb will get straightened out later on. Incredible. Comes on Rav Yomi and says, Mosvina de daik v'lo garis. Chas Sham Divina says, absolutely not. Choose the Rebbe who goes slower, less information, but greater clarity. Why? Shabesh da kevan da al. Once you learn something with a mistake, right? Or once you learn something in a mistaken fashion, or you learn something in a corrupted way, it's very difficult to unlearn it and relearn it. Once a mistake is learned, it's very difficult to unlearn it. Therefore, better to have a Rebbe who goes slower with greater clarity. So even though, again, the student is getting less information. So we'll say, is it really a fascinating machlokas? That it's not just about education, really just also like about, almost like, I think about this sometimes like in terms like the realm of accomplishment. Is it better to accomplish a lot of things, but the things that you're accomplishing, you're not necessarily accomplishing as well as you could, versus a more constricted focus, a narrower tunnel of, okay, I'm working on this one thing or this two thing, and I'm going to do it really well. However, is it better to do a lot of things, okay, or much fewer things in a really excellent fashion? So the point of it is, see, think about it, it's machlokes, and the truth is, I think we all encounter this in life in different ways. Sometimes I have to multitask, so I have to do a lot of different things, and I'm not going to do anything as perfectly as I would if that was my sole area of focus, but it's more important for me to kind of like push a number of different initiatives down the field. Versus sometimes in life there's something really important, I need to kind of put on blinders to everything else. That stuff is not going to get done. I'm going to have laser focus on this, and it's going to get done really well. So again, just two different mahalchim in life, two different mahalchim in chinuch. So Rav Arda is very focused on this idea because he says it has to be that you choose the Rebbe that goes slower, but more methodically and with greater clarity. Why? Because once you learn something in a mistaken way, the shabeshta kevan da al. Once a mistake takes root, it's rooted. You're not going to get it out. And therefore, again, make sure you learn it right the first thing. Gemara tells an incredible story. So what's incredible? So Yoav was general of David HaMelech's army. He's at war with Edom, specifically Amalek. He wipes out all of the men of Amalek, but leaves the women alive. So he comes to David. David HaMelech says to Yoav, his general, Amid Beis, we'll say 21b, incredible Gemara today. 21b. My time Yoav, why did you leave the women alive? The mitzvah is to wipe out all of Amalek. Right? Why? So I don't understand. Why did you leave the women? It's supposed to wipe out all of Amalek. Hachi Amalek, Dechsev Timcha es Zichar Amalek. So Yoav says, it's a pasuk. The pasuk says, wipe out Zachar, wipe out the males of Amalek. The men. Amalei, David says, no, that's not how you read it. Amalei v'ha'anan zecher karinan. It's not Zechar, it's Zecher. Obliterate the memory of Amalek, which means wipe out everyone, including the women. Amalei, so Yoav says, I don't know what you want from me. Ana Zachar akarion. I was taught that it was Zachar. That it was males and not Zecher, not memory. So we'll say, so listen to this. So Yoav is literally saying, this is how I was taught the pasuk. Timcha es Zechar Amalek. Wipe out the male members of Amalek. David says that's not the pasuk. It's Timcha es Zecher Amalek. Wipe out the memory of Amalek, including the women. So listen to this. Gemara says, Azal Shaili Lirabe. Listen to this. Yoav, the general, goes back to his Rebbe. I don't know, can you imagine like his second grade Rebbe, his Chumash Rebbe. Amrle Heich Akrisan. So Yoav asked him, tell me, Rebbe, how did you teach it to me? Amrle Zecher. He said the pasuk is Zecher. Shakal Safsir Lamikdale. So Yoav took out a sword, was ready to kill his Rebbe. Now, why was Yoav so upset? So obviously the Rebbe knew how to read it, but the Rebbe never took the time to make sure that the students knew what they were doing. So isn't this incredible? This is incredible. In other words, Yov's like, I don't understand. What were you doing? Your job is not just to go ahead and give me a ton of information. Your job as Rebbe is to make sure that I know the information that you're giving me. So how could it be that you allowed me to graduate? How did you allow me to go on to the next class without knowing how to read a pasuk in Chumash? And again, understand that Yoav left alive Amalek. In other words, Yoav had the opportunity here to obliterate Amalek. He didn't do it not because he didn't want to comply with the pasuk, but because he had flawed chinuch. He had flawed education. So the Gemara says, Amrle Amai. So Rebbe says, whoa, what is this? Why are you ready to kill me? Amrle Dichsev Arur Osem Alechas Hashem Remiyah. Cursed is the person who makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu's work an abomination. In other words, you failed in your job as a Rebbe. You did not teach me the right way. Therefore, you deserve today. Amalei Shaf Kelahu Gabra Deleikum Bar. So the Rebbe pleads for his life. He says, listen, it's bad enough again that I clearly failed you. Let me live with the knowledge that I failed you and don't kill me. So Amalei Kalsov Ksiv Arur Monea Charba Meidam. Cursed is the one who withholds his sword from shedding blood. In other words, when there is a need to shed blood and you don't do so, or cursed is such a person. So Yoav says you deserve to die for the mistake that you've made. So the Gemara says, what happened? Some say he killed him, some say he didn't kill him. All right, so we'll say a very dramatic story, but I just want to point out something amazing. The responsibility that rests upon the shoulders of rebbeim and teachers and parents. Because this is not just the din in teachers, right? We're all remember, as this whole Gemara started, the initial and still responsibility of chinuch rests upon the children. Based on Yoshua ben Gamma, we outsource that responsibility to teachers. But just because I'm outsourcing it does not free me from the responsibility. I am the primary person responsible for the education of my children. And what's so tragic about this story? So the Rebbe didn't do his job. Or I guess it could also be that Yoav didn't pay attention, but clearly at least Yoav feels that the Rebbe didn't do his job. That the teacher didn't do a check for understanding. You have to do a check for understanding. You have to make sure that if you're educating children, that they understand what it is that you're doing. You can't just graduate them class to class to class, put them on a conveyor belt of education, and somehow one day they're finished with school, but they can't read a pasuk in Chumash. They don't know how to take apart a Gemara. They don't understand the fundamentals of Yiddishkeit. They don't understand Emunah. How could that be? How could that be? There's a failure somewhere there. There's a breakdown in that system. So the Gemara is saying over here, the failure to eradicate Amalek from the world came because, at least according to Yoav, that his Rebbe didn't do a check for understanding. And again, where was Yoav's father? What's Yoav's responsibility? We can never, it's always very easy to blame teachers and rebbeim for everything, right? They are the most common and easy scapegoats for everything that goes wrong with our children. Chas v'sholom, that's not the case. But again, we're all partners in the education of our children. So the Rebbe has to do his part. The teacher has to do his or her part. The parents have to do their primary part. And failure to deliver proper chinuch to our children from any one of the educational partners could have disastrous results. Baruch Hu should give us incredible siyata d'shmaya to be able to educate and inspire and help our children mature, self-actualize, B'derech Yaakov Saba Kadisha 120 Shanim Tovos. Let's go weiter. Vamarava, Mikri Yenuka, Shasla V'tabcha V'omna V'sofer Masa. So let's say all of these people. Mikri Yenuka is a teacher, a Rebbe. Shasla, someone who plants vines. Tabcha is a butcher. Omna, bloodletter. And Sofer is a scribe. So I scribe of the city. Kulan Kimusrin V'omdin Ninhu. All of these people are forewarned. We'll say these are all professions where if you mess up, right, the mess up has long-lasting effects. Long-lasting effects. So therefore, all of these people are considered to be, we actually saw this Gemara before, all of these people are forewarned. Rashi says, Kimosrin va'omdin damu, shlei kalkuluvim, kilkulu masalkin lo below asraisa. Generally, again, if you have a profession, you mess up in your profession, you get a warning. These professions, there's no warning. If you mess up, you're automatically removed because the stakes are so high, and ultimately, again, often the mistakes are irreversible. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, you're considered to be forewarned. Klala de milsa, the rule is kol psida de lo hadar masra va'omedu. Any profession in which if you make a mistake, the mistake cannot be reversed, you are on notice. You are on notice. And should you chas v'shalom make a mistake, that is grounds for immediate dismissal. Incredible. Amar Rav Huna. Hai bar mavua de oki reiche v'asa bar mavua chavrei the kamoki gabe. So let's say this case. So now we're going back to shared usage of a courtyard. Or in this case, a mavoi. Both Americans went on a maving yesterday's daf also. You have multiple homes opened up into a shared chazar, shared courtyard. Multiple courtyards opened up into a shared alleyway, and that alleyway led out into the public domain. So watch this. One of the members of the mavoi went ahead and opened up a mill. Started a business, a grinding mill in the mavoi. And now a second guy, Reuven, opens up a business. He's a mill in the mavoi, and now Shimon decides he wants to open up a business as well. So the Gemara says, Dinahu dema akeviluya. Reuven can say to Shimon, you can't do that. I already started here. I've been here. You can't now open up a competing business literally right here after I was here. Because Reuven can say to Shimon, you are depriving me of my parnasa. You're depriving me of my parnasa. So this is a very interesting sugya, right? We just spoke about before that competition is good, right? Because competition forces everyone to go and be better, but yet even in the realm of competition, the Gemara wants to suggest there may be certain limitations, right? So if Reuven is going and operating a mill in a particular mavoi, and Shimon can't go ahead and open up another mill in the same mavoi. So we'll say, let's bring a aliya to this. So we'll say, if I'm a fisherman and I have a fishing net, so if Reuven is there, he also is a fisherman, has a fishing net, I have to distance my net from his net. How far do I have to distance it? The amount that a fish normally swims in like one swimming period. So the Gemara says, how much is that? The Kama Amra Barafuna ad parsa. It's a parsa. The Gemara says, so you see from here that Allah Lamaisa, if somebody's already operating a business, you have to distance your business a little bit so as not to negatively impact them. Reuven is a fisherman, he has a fishing net. I have to distance my net, at least the parsa. Reuven is operating a mill in the mavoi. I can't operate another mill in that same mavoi. The Gemara says, no, that's not a good raya. Shiny dugim, diyavi siyira. Fish are different, right? Because I will say, ultimately, again, once fish know that there's food in a particular place, they're going to go there. So therefore, once Reuven's carved out his place, it is clear that halach l'maisa, the fish are going to go there, and me setting up a net in close proximity is actively depriving him of something. However, again, Rashi says over here, Rashi says, in the case of the mill, it could very well be that, listen, Reuven is going to have his customers, Shimon is going to have his customers. In the case of the fish net, right, there's one group of fish, and Reuven's already carved out that space by putting food there. If I go ahead, so the fish are going to come there, I set up another net right next to him, I'm actively pulling the fish away from him. But in the case of the mill, maybe Reuven could have his customers, and I could have my customers. So the Gemara says, Shani dagim diabi sari amalei ravina l'rabba, leim Rav Huna d'amrak Rav Yehuda. So we'll say Rav Huna says, like Rav Yehuda. What is it? This is not Rav Yehuda Omer. Lo yechalik chenveni klayos ve'egozim litinokos mimnei shemar gilin etzlo. So we'll say, watch this. So let's say again, I have a store and Reuven has a store. I decide, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start luring customers to my store. How do I do that? I'm going to start handing out treats to the kids, right? Because if the kids like coming to my store, they're going to bring their parents to my store also. So I start handing out, again, parched wheat and nuts, candies. I start giving out candies to the kids. So Rabbi Yehuda says, you're not allowed to do that. Can't do that. Unfair advantage. The Chacham say, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Shabbos says, therefore again, Rav Huna, who says that if Reuven is operating a mill Mamavoy, I can't operate a mill. Rav Huna holds like Rabbi Yehuda, right? That you can't operate a mill. So Rabbi Yehuda says you can't start giving out. I can't start giving out candies to the kids and pulling business away from Reuven. To which the Gemara says, not necessarily. I feel Tim Rabbanon. Ad kamo pligi Rabbanon alei Rabbi Yehuda. The truth is, the Mavoi case could even align with the Rabbanon. Why? Why over here, in the case of the handing out to the candies, why do the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Yehuda and hold that I can't do that? I can hand out candies even though I'm going to end up pulling away customers. Why? So the Gemara says, Hasam da Amarle, Ana kameflegi amaguzi, at plug shiuski. Because I will say, because I can say Reuven, in the same way that I'm handing out candy and stuff, you could also hand out stuff. It's a free country. I'm trying to incentivize people to come to my store. You hand out even better. I'm handing out candy. You hand out, whatever. You hand out some other item that's even better than what I'm handing out. It's free markets. Aval hacha afilu rabbanon modu de amrle kapaskis le. But over here, even the Rabbanon would agree. Why would the Rabbanon agree? Because I will say, in this case over here, again, where Reuven is actively operating a mill, and I come in there with the same exact service, in the same defined or confined area, perhaps even the Rabbanon would say that one is not allowed to do this. So what we'll do is we'll stop over here for today. Actually, let's just go a little bit weiter. Meisvei. Person could open up a store right next door to his friend's store, and a bathhouse next to his friend's bathhouse. Because I can say, Reuven, listen, you operate your property, I'll operate my property. What's the big deal? So we'll say, what do you see over here? So the Gemara says, Tanaihi. We're going to see this tomorrow. But it says, this whole thing is machlokas tanaim. So in other words, the line between fair competition versus actively impeding and taking away from someone's parnasa. So how much competition is allowed versus how much does halacha safeguard the ability to make a livelihood is a machlokes tanaim. Can I open up a competing business, same business, right next door to you or not? Seems to be a machlokes tanaim. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with the machlokes tanaim tomorrow. I look forward to seeing everyone in person on Wednesday morning. Shkayach, everyone, have a great day.